Hello, Yarny friends. I'm Sara Sach, and welcome back to my crochet channel. Today's video is our this or that question. And what this or that is I usually ask you a question, I give you a couple of answers, and you can give your opinions down in the comments below this video. Now, today's video is a continuation of one I did a few weeks ago. A couple of weeks ago, I talked about multiples. Do you use them? Do you like them? Are they important to you? And I had a lot of questions on how to figure out the multiples, and they still just didn't understand. And so today's video is going to be what I call Multiples 2.0. We're going to talk about it again, and I'm going to go into a little bit more details of how to figure out a multiple and also how to wing it. All right, so it's not really a this or that question. It's more just an explanation. And again, I love your comments, so please add them to the comment section. All right, let's go over to the other camera so that I can show you what I'm talking about. So this is just a real simple square here. Not anything real in-depth. And it's probably something we've all done. 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets. And so we're going to talk about this. But before we talk about this, we're going to talk about multiples. And I just wrote it down on this piece of paper. So when you get a multiple on any pattern, you get something that says something like this, 3 plus 4. Well, your brain is saying 3 plus 4 is 7, right? But that's not what that's referring to. What it's referring to is you're going to do multiples of the first number and then add in the second number. And here is the multiple for this. Multiples of this are 3 plus 4. And so we're going to do 3 times 5. So we're going to do 3 times 5 equals 15. And then we're going to add an additional 4, which equals 19. And on this particular pattern, we're talking chains, okay? And so what you do is you take your ball of yarn or whatever yarn you're using, and I'm using a little bit chunkier yarn just so that you can see it a little bit better. All right, so just to review what we just talked about, our multiple is 3 plus 4. We're going to do that 3 times 5 equals 15 chains plus 4 more chains equal 19. Okay, so I've got my yarn here and I'm going to chain 19 chains. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. All right. Now for this pattern, we're going to double crochet in the 4th chain from the hook. 1, 2, 3, 4. This chain 3 at the beginning counts as 1, and then we double crochet the next one. So then chain 1, skip 1, and 1 double crochet in the next 2. 1, 2, chain 1, skip 1, double crochet in the next 2. Chain 1, skip 1, double crochet in the next 2. 1 and 2. Chain 1, skip 1, double crochet in the next 2. Chain 1, skip 1, and that leaves us 2 for our last 2 stitches. I'll go ahead and chain 3. And that's how you figure out your multiples. All right, let's review a little bit about what we just talked about. Our multiple is 3 chains plus 4. We wanted it to be a little over 5 inches, and this is going to equal out to about 5.5 because 3 times 5 is 15. And then we're adding those 4 more stitches in order to do the beginning here. All right, so 3 chains equal 1 inch. And so this is going to end up measuring just a little over 5 inches because we have 2 more stitches there. Okay, and so keep that in mind when you're adjusting. Go by what they say. This one is a little over 5 inches. All right, so these are what we say approximates. And where it's different is if our gauge is different. If you stitch looser, this might be 6 inches wide. If you stitch tighter, it might be right at 5 inches wide. Okay, but that is a gauge for you to work with. The next one is 3 rows equal 2 inches. Well, we can't measure it off this one because we only did 1 row. So here's my practice piece. 1, 2, 3, so we'll put that on there. 3 rows equals approximately 2 inches. All right, so what that means is if you want to make it longer, say you're making a blanket and you have a baby pattern, but you want it more like a lapgan or maybe even a big afghan, you can add additional rows knowing that 3 rows equal 2 inches. And that's the same thing with your chains. This is a small swatch. Maybe I wanted to make this into a big scarf or cowl and I wanted it a whole lot wider. Well, then I would add an additional 3 chains per inch. Okay? And that's why it's important to understand multiples and how to adjust your measurements. One other thing I wanted to bring up that I had a lot of questions about was stitching in the round or stitching in a circle. Multiples won't work for this because the way it works is you increase every row on a circle, whether they're single crochets, half doubles, doubles, V-stitches, whatever you're doing, you're going to increase a round. And that's where it's important to understand how many rows or rounds equal your inches. And then you can know how many increases you need to make it bigger. All right? And a lot of people ask me, do you have multiples for your circles? And I don't. I give you the measurements like this so that you can add how many rows that you need with your increases to make it bigger. All right? And that's where the confusion is sometimes because it's different depending on what you're making. Even like a granny square, multiples don't work. You do how many rounds around each granny square is going to measure. And so whether your tension is the same as mine or somebody else's, tension and gauge is really important if you have exact measurements that you need to make. All right, now keep in mind, like I said, everybody stitches differently. I tend to stitch more loose, but not always. And so that's where gauge and tension comes in play. All right, so let's say you want to make this blanket. You love the stitch pattern, but you don't really know how to figure out the multiple. And so I have a little cheat or a little suggestion that I do sometimes, and I'm going to show you that. And don't worry, you will not be frustrated with this. All right, let's say you found this adorable blanket pattern. You want to make it, but it's not the size that you want, okay? And so what I do is if it begins with a chain, I'll chain as many as I want for the width of what I want, and then I'll chain an additional 10. That way I have room to play with it, okay? Now I'm going to show you what I do. So here's a chain here I have. I'm just going to add some extra stitches. And let's pretend like this is like 4 feet wide, all right? And so then I just start working the pattern. Let's say it's a single crochet in the next stitch and in the next. Then chain 2, skip 2, 2 single crochets. 1, 2, chain 2. And we just work this across. This is just something I made up in my head. It is not a stitch pattern, although it could be. Would make a nice stitch pattern. All right, so then I'm stitching across. And I get it the length, or the width, I should say, that I want, okay? And then I have these extra chains. So what I usually do is I'll do a few more rows just to make sure. I'll measure it. I'll do a few more rows just to make sure that it's the stitch width that I want for that blanket. All right, so I like it. It's the width that I want for the blanket. And so then what I'll do is I'll come back in, and these stitches that I didn't need, I can just gently take those out. All right, and then just snug that down. And a lot of times I'll go ahead and just add a knot just so that it doesn't come undone. Okay, so now I don't have extra chains here that I don't need, and I have my blanket the width that I need. All right, so my suggestion is this: if you're making something that's big like a blanket and you do not want to have to worry about working out the multiples, this little cheat will help you. You chain the width you need, measure it, make sure it's the width that you need, and then add 5 or 10 extra stitches. That way, if you don't have enough, you've got a few extra to work with. And if you have extras, you can take them out. Now, I'm sure there are a lot of crocheters who have been crocheting as long as I have that will tell you that that is not the proper way to do that. But sometimes, rather than getting frustrated with trying to figure out your own multiples because they're not listed in the pattern, you can do it that way. And I have done it that way, and it works just fine. You tie that little knot on the end there, and it will hold it after you've taken those extra chains out. And so that's what I do sometimes if I don't have the multiples to work with, and I just love a pattern, and I really just don't have the time to sit down and work out the multiples. Okay? So it's just a way to keep you from being frustrated because you want to work this beautiful pattern. And of course, as we've said, multiples work best in rows. Sometimes shawls and different things will have them, but again, circles, it doesn't work. You got to go by measurements around, and the same thing with grannies. Okay? So this is Multiples 2.0 with a little cheat. So here's a question if you want to answer it. Would you take the time to work out the multiple, or would you cheat? It's okay if you do cheat, okay? Remember, when it comes to crochet, we have to do what works best for us, all right? All righty, so I'll see you next time on another edition of This or That.